You stand at a crossroads whether you know it or not. Every human being does. It is the place where excuses meet truth, where comfort collides with calling, where potential is either buried or unleashed. You have been given a mind, not as an ornament, not as a passive receiver of noise and distraction, but as a powerful instrument, and yet look at how lightly we treat it. Look at how cheaply we spend our thoughts. Look at how easily we surrender our attention to things that will never matter when the weight of reality finally presses in upon us. You were not made to drift. You were not designed to be carried along by impulse, appetite, or fear. You were not created merely to consume information, scroll endlessly, repeat opinions you never examined, and then call that living. The mind you possess is a stewardship. It is a gift, and every gift carries responsibility. The tragedy of our age is not a lack of intelligence, but a lack of seriousness. Men and women with astonishing capacity live shallow lives because they have never been taught, or never dared, to think deeply, to discipline their thoughts, to bring their inner life under control. You speak of potential as though it were something mystical, something that descends upon a select few. But potential is not unlocked by wishing. It is unlocked by war, a war against laziness, a war against distraction, a war against the lies you have believed about yourself. Most people are not limited by ability. They are limited by what they tolerate. They tolerate confusion. They tolerate inconsistency. They tolerate mediocrity and then dress it up with sophisticated language so they don't have to repent of it. Your mind is not neutral ground. It is a battlefield. Every day it is being shaped, trained, bent in a direction. If you are not deliberately training it, someone else is. If you are not governing your thoughts are governing you. And do not deceive yourself, because the direction of your thoughts will determine the direction of your life. You will never rise above the ceiling of your thinking. You will never outgrow what you refuse to confront in your mind. You want power, but you do not want discipline. You want clarity, but you will not slow down long enough to think. You want transformation, but you resist the pain of change, and so you remain the same year after year, with different circumstances perhaps, different faces around you, but the same internal chaos, the same excuses, the same patterns, the same wasted hours. Do you not see that this is not an intellectual problem? It is a moral one. The unlocking of the mind begins with honesty, brutal honesty. You must tell yourself the truth about where you are, not where you pretend to be. You must look at your habits without justification. Look at how you spend your time. Look at what you feed your mind. Look at what you avoid thinking about. Look at how quickly you flee from silence, because silence exposes the noise within you. If you cannot sit alone with your thoughts, it is not because you are busy. It is because you are afraid of what you might find. A disciplined mind does not happen accidentally. It is forged. It is trained to focus when everything around it screams for distraction. It is trained to think clearly when emotions rise like a flood. It is trained to pursue truth even when truth is uncomfortable, and this training requires submission, submission to reality, submission to principles that do not bend to your feelings, submission to the hard work of learning, reflecting, correcting, and beginning again when you fail. Do not tell me you lack brain power. That is a lie you use to excuse neglect. You have far more capacity than you have ever dared to use. The real issue is that thinking deeply costs you something. It costs comfort. It costs the easy dopamine of entertainment. It costs the approval of those who are content to remain shallow. And so you choose what is easy over what is necessary, and then you wonder why your life feels empty and your potential remains locked away. You must learn to think in categories that are larger than yourself. Most people never do. They think only in terms of immediate pleasure or immediate pain. They are governed by impulse, but maturity begins when you can step back, analyze your own thoughts, question your assumptions, and act according to conviction rather than mood. This is where true mental power begins, not in raw intelligence, but in self-governance. Your thoughts must be trained to obey truth, not your preferences, but what is actually real. Reality does not care about your opinions. It will crush you if you ignore it, and one of the great signs of mental weakness is the refusal to accept correction. A proud mind cannot grow. It is sealed shut, but a humble mind, one that recognizes its own limitations, can expand beyond what you ever imagine. Consider how little time you spend actually thinking, not reacting, not scrolling, not consuming, but thinking. Thinking requires effort. It requires sustained attention. It requires silence. And silence terrifies a generation addicted to noise. But until you reclaim silence, you will never reclaim your mind. Until you can be alone with your thoughts and not run from them, you will never master them. Unlocking your potential is not about adding more information. It is about ordering what you already have. Most people are drowning in information and starving for wisdom. Wisdom comes when knowledge is processed, examined, tested, and applied. That requires patience. It requires restraint. It requires the courage to say no to many things so you can say yes to what truly matters. You must learn to think long term. A mind that lives only for the moment will always sabotage its future. Every meaningful achievement requires delayed gratification. Every discipline requires saying no now so you can say yes later. And this begins in the mind, where you decide whether you will be ruled by appetite or by purpose. There is a reason so many people feel powerless. They have never learned to command their own thoughts. They believe every negative narrative that passes through their mind. They rehearse failure. They magnify fear. They dwell on past mistakes until those mistakes become an identity. And then they wonder why they cannot move forward. You cannot build a strong life on weak thinking. You must challenge your inner dialogue. Much of what you tell yourself is not true. It is unexamined assumption, fear dressed up as realism, laziness disguised as humility. A disciplined mind interrogates its own thoughts. It asks, is this true? Is this helpful? Is this leading me toward growth or decay? And when a thought fails the test, it is rejected, not entertained. Do you understand how serious this is? The quality of your thinking will determine the quality of your decisions. The quality of your decisions will determine the direction of your life. This is not abstract theory. This is reality. And yet, you treat your mind as though it were a playground instead of a command center. You allow anything to enter. You allow anything to stay. And then you act surprised when chaos follows. Unlocking your brain power requires a willingness to suffer. Yes, suffer, the suffering of concentration, the suffering of discipline, the suffering of saying no to easy pleasures, the suffering of confronting hard truths about yourself. But this suffering is purposeful. It produces clarity. It produces strength. It produces freedom. The mind that has been trained through discipline is not easily shaken. You were created with the capacity to learn, to reason, to imagine, to plan, to build. But capacity unused becomes capacity wasted, and wasted capacity becomes regret. One day you will look back, and you will not regret that life was hard. You will regret that you did not take it seriously. You will regret the hours lost to distraction. You will regret the books not read, the skills not developed, the thoughts not examined. Stop waiting for motivation. Motivation is a poor master. Discipline is what you need. Discipline in what you read. Discipline in what you watch. Discipline in what you think about when no one is watching. The mind you build in private will determine the life you live in public. There are no shortcuts here. There are no hacks. There is only daily, deliberate practice. You must decide what kind of mind you are going to have. A passive one that reacts to whatever comes, or an active one that chooses its focus. A shallow one that skims the surface of everything, or a deep one that pursues understanding. A lazy one that avoids effort, or a disciplined one that embraces it. This decision will shape everything else. Do not be deceived by talent. Talent without discipline is a tragedy. Some of the most gifted minds accomplish the least because they never learned to govern themselves. Meanwhile, those with ordinary ability but extraordinary discipline surpass them. Mental power is not about IQ. It is about control, control of attention, control of thought, control of response. You must learn to think clearly under pressure. This requires preparation. When crisis comes, you do not rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training. If your mind is chaotic, your decisions will be chaotic. If your mind is disciplined, you will act with clarity even in difficulty. This is why the work must be done now, in the ordinary moments, in the unseen hours. Your potential is not unlocked by affirmation alone. You do not need to be told that you are amazing. You need to be told the truth. You are capable of far more than you are currently doing, and you are responsible for what you do with what you have been given. That truth should not inflate your ego. It should sober you. It should drive you to action. You must stop blaming circumstances. Circumstances reveal the condition of your mind. They do not determine it. Two people can face the same situation and respond in entirely different ways. The difference is not intelligence, but mindset. One has trained their mind to look for solutions. The other has trained their mind to look for excuses. And training always shows. Begin with small acts of discipline. Set aside time to think, to read, to learn. Protect that time fiercely. Do not wait until you feel like it. You will rarely feel like it. Do it anyway. Over time, your mind will strengthen, your focus will sharpen, your confidence will grow, not because you feel better about yourself, but because you are becoming more capable. Do not despise slow progress. The mind grows like a muscle through consistent resistance. There will be days when you feel dull, distracted, unmotivated. Do the work anyway. Those days are part of the process. Those days are forging something in you that comfort never could. You must also learn restraint. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every argument deserves your energy. Not every emotion deserves expression. Mental power includes the ability to remain silent, to observe, to wait. Impulsive minds are weak minds. Strong minds are patient. Guard what enters your mind. What you repeatedly expose yourself to will shape you. If you feed your mind with trivialities, do not be surprised when your thinking becomes trivial. If you immerse yourself in noise, do not be surprised when clarity eludes you. Choose carefully. Your future depends on it. You are not a victim of your thoughts unless you choose to be. You can train your mind to focus, to endure, to reason, to create. But you must take responsibility. No one else can do this for you. No one else can think your thoughts. No one else can discipline your attention. This is your work, and do not misunderstand. Unlocking your brain power is not an end in itself. It is a means. A disciplined mind enables a disciplined life. Clear thinking leads to wise action. Wise action leads to meaningful impact. The goal is not to be impressive, but to be effective. Not to be admired, but to be faithful with what you have been given. You must become serious, serious about truth, serious about growth, serious about the stewardship of your mind. The world does not need more noise. It needs men and women who can think clearly, act wisely, and stand firm when others collapse into confusion. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Begin now. Examine your thinking. Challenge it. Discipline it. Feed it well. Train it daily. And over time, you will discover that what you once thought was beyond you is now within reach. But know this, there is no neutral ground. If you do nothing, you are still choosing. You are choosing decline. You are choosing to let your potential rot. You are choosing to live beneath what you were capable of. And that choice will cost you more than you realize. So take responsibility, take control, take the long view. The work will be hard. It will be uncomfortable. It will require perseverance. But on the other side of that discipline is freedom. Freedom from chaos, freedom from impulsiveness, freedom to live with purpose and clarity. The question is not whether you have potential. The question is whether you will do what is required to unlock it. Whether you will submit your mind to discipline. Whether you will endure the process. Whether you will stop making excuses and start making progress. Because in the end, you will not be judged by what you could have done, but by what you did with what you were given, and the mind you choose to cultivate will determine whether your life becomes a testimony of growth or a quiet monument to wasted opportunity, a mind awakened, disciplined, and set on. Truth, rather than comfort, mental discipline, is the unseen foundation beneath every meaningful achievement, and without it, potential remains nothing more than a comforting idea. People speak of talent as though it were the decisive factor in life, but talent without discipline is unstable, unreliable, and often destructive. A powerful mind that lacks control is like a strong engine without a steering wheel. It may have force, speed, and capacity, but it cannot be directed, and eventually it crashes. Mental discipline is what gives direction to ability. It is what turns raw capacity into sustained effectiveness. Most people never fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they cannot govern their thoughts. Their minds are reactive rather than intentional. They wake up and immediately surrender their attention to whatever demands it first. Emotions dictate their focus. Discomfort determines their decisions. When things become difficult, their thinking collapses into avoidance or self-pity. This is not weakness of intellect, it is weakness of discipline. A disciplined mind does not wait to feel ready. It acts according to conviction, not impulse. Mental discipline begins with attention. What you consistently focus on shapes the structure of your mind. A scattered mind cannot produce consistent results. If your attention is fragmented, your efforts will be fragmented as well. You cannot build anything substantial while constantly shifting your focus. Every time you allow distraction to rule you, you reinforce the habit of mental instability. Over time, this erodes your ability to concentrate, to reason deeply, and to endure complex thought. Discipline restores order by training the mind to stay where it is placed, even when it would rather escape. The mind naturally seeks what is easy. It avoids effort, tension, and resistance. Left untrained, it gravitates toward entertainment, novelty, and comfort. This is why discipline must be imposed rather than expected to arise spontaneously. You do not drift into mental strength. You drift into mental decay. Strength requires resistance, and resistance requires intentional choice. Every time you choose to think when it would be easier to scroll, to reflect when it would be easier to react, to persist when it would be easier to quit, you are forging discipline. Mental discipline also governs emotional responses. Undisciplined minds are controlled by feelings. When motivation is high, they act. When motivation fades, they stop. When they feel confident, they advance. When fear appears, they retreat. This instability keeps potential locked behind emotional fluctuation. A disciplined mind acknowledges emotion but does not submit to it. It can feel fear and still move forward. It can feel boredom and still continue. It can feel discouraged and still remain faithful to the task. This capacity alone separates those who grow from those who stagnate. Another critical aspect of mental discipline is the ability to delay gratification. Every meaningful pursuit demands patience. Learning, mastery, growth, and excellence all require sustained effort over time. An undisciplined mind wants immediate reward. It wants progress without process. It wants results without sacrifice. But potential unfolds slowly, and only a disciplined mind can remain committed when the reward is distant. This is why so many people start strong and finish weak. They are excited by beginnings, but offended by endurance. Mental discipline also involves the regulation of internal dialogue. The thoughts you allow to repeat within your mind shape your identity. An undisciplined mind accepts every thought as truth. Fearful thoughts become beliefs. Limiting assumptions become permanent boundaries. Past failures become lifelong labels. A disciplined mind challenges these narratives. It examines thoughts rather than obeying them. It asks whether they are true, whether they are useful, whether they lead toward growth or retreat. This internal governance is essential for unlocking potential because unchallenged thoughts quietly dictate behavior. Clarity is another fruit of mental discipline. Confusion thrives where discipline is absent. When the mind is overloaded, overstimulated, and undirected, decision-making becomes exhausting. Everything feels heavy. Everything feels uncertain. A disciplined mind simplifies. It learns to prioritize. It distinguishes between what is urgent and what is important. This clarity frees energy for meaningful work. Without it, potential is drained by indecision and constant second-guessing. Mental discipline requires consistency. Occasional effort produces occasional results. Sporadic focus produces fragile progress. Potential is unlocked through daily, ordinary faithfulness to mental habits that are often unseen and uncelebrated. Reading when no one is watching, thinking when no one is applauding, practicing restraint when no one would notice indulgence. These small acts accumulate. Over time, they reshape the mind, strengthen focus, and expand capacity. What looks insignificant in isolation becomes transformative in repetition. A disciplined mind is also teachable. Pride is a form of mental indiscipline. When a person refuses correction, they halt their own growth. A teachable mind recognizes that learning never ends. It seeks understanding rather than validation. It listens carefully. It evaluates honestly. This humility allows the mind to expand rather than harden. Potential cannot grow in a closed system. It requires openness to refinement, adjustment, and even rebuke. Mental discipline also includes the ability to endure mental strain. Deep thinking is tiring. Concentration consumes energy. Problem-solving demands effort. Many avoid this strain and choose mental shortcuts instead. They rely on slogans rather than understanding. They repeat opinions rather than forming convictions. But potential is unlocked through depth, not surface familiarity. A disciplined mind is willing to wrestle with complexity, to sit with unanswered questions, to think slowly and carefully until clarity emerges. Another essential component is the discipline of environment. The mind is influenced by what surrounds it. Noise, chaos, and constant stimulation weaken attention. A disciplined individual intentionally shapes their environment to support focus. They create spaces for silence. They limit unnecessary input. They understand that what they repeatedly expose themselves to will shape their thinking. This is not isolation. It is intentionality. Without it, the mind becomes a dumping ground for other people's priorities. Mental discipline also governs response to failure. Undisciplined minds interpret failure as identity. Disciplined minds interpret failure as information. They analyze what went wrong without collapsing into shame or defensiveness. They adjust strategy rather than abandoning the pursuit. This resilience is crucial for unlocking potential because growth is inseparable from failure. Anyone who cannot endure failure cannot reach their capacity. There is also a moral dimension to mental discipline. To think clearly requires commitment to truth, even when truth is uncomfortable. Self-deception is easier than honesty. Rationalization is easier than repentance. But a mind that consistently avoids truth cannot grow strong. Discipline demands integrity in thought. It demands that you face reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. This courage strengthens the mind and anchors it in something solid. Mental discipline shapes identity over time. You become what you repeatedly think and practice. A disciplined mind gradually becomes calm under pressure, focused amid distraction, steady in uncertainty. These qualities are not personality traits, they are trained responses. They are the result of countless small choices made consistently. Potential is not unlocked in a single moment of inspiration, but through sustained faithfulness to these choices. Without mental discipline, potential becomes a burden. It produces frustration rather than fulfillment. You sense that you are capable of more, yet you cannot access it. This gap between capacity and execution creates restlessness, envy, and self-criticism. Discipline closes that gap by aligning intention with action. It gives form to desire and direction to effort. Mental discipline does not remove struggle. It gives structure to struggle. It does not eliminate resistance. It teaches endurance. It does not guarantee success. It guarantees growth, and growth is the soil in which potential thrives. Where discipline is absent, potential withers under the weight of inconsistency and distraction. Every serious transformation begins in the unseen realm of thought. Before actions change, thinking must change. Before habits shift, focus must shift. Mental discipline is the mechanism through which this change occurs. It is the daily submission of the mind to purpose rather than preference. It is the quiet, often uncomfortable choice to govern thoughts rather than be governed by them. Those who unlock their potential are not necessarily more gifted. They are more disciplined. They have learned to master attention, regulate emotion, endure effort, and submit their thinking to truth. This mastery is not dramatic. It is deliberate. It is cultivated in ordinary moments through intentional practice. Over time, the mind becomes stronger, clearer, and more capable, able to sustain effort where others collapse, able to think deeply where others skim, able to remain steady where others are ruled by impulse and distraction.